Hello, Knowles here. Tonight's story is called The Serpent's Scale. Dr. Elena Rostova had never been the kind of historian who belonged in the field. Her life had always been spent in controlled environments, archives, libraries, and university offices where history existed only as ink on fragile paper. She specialized in dead languages and reconstructed meaning from fragments others considered irrelevant or corrupted. Over time, she became known for one uncomfortable trait. She was usually right about things other experts preferred to ignore. And even more uncomfortable than that, she really needed validation to act on what she believed was true. That mindset did not come from arrogance, it came from experience, from years of seeing patterns that others dismissed until those same patterns turned out to matter far more than anyone expected. And it was exactly that instinct that led her into something no institution had ever officially acknowledged. It began in Istanbul, deep beneath the modern university, in a forgotten archive that had not been properly opened in decades. She was shown a manuscript that should not have survived the 13th century, a heavily illuminated Byzantine religious text, fragile and incomplete, but still intact enough to study. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, the kind of document that had already been catalogued, interpreted, and safely stored away from further scrutiny. But Elena noticed something immediately wrong with it. One page had been removed, and more importantly, replaced. The forgery was nearly perfect, precise enough that most scholars would have passed it over without question. But Elena did not study surface accuracy. She studied structure, and the structure was wrong. Not visually or physically, but linguistically. There was a disruption in rhythm, a break in expected cadence, subtle enough to be missed unless you were looking for the absence of continuity rather than its presence. Whoever altered the manuscript had not been trying to erase meaning, they had been embedding it. That distinction changed everything. Erasure removes knowledge, and embedding preserves it in disguise. She worked on the manuscript for days, slowly stripping away the layers of intentional misdirection, and eventually something emerged that did not belong to conventional historical interpretation at all. A reference repeated in structured intervals, a coded alignment hidden in linguistic repetition rather than explicit text. The Serpent Scale, a Byzantine medallion described inconsistently across centuries of fragmented records. In some accounts, it was symbolic. In others, it was a physical object. In most, it was removed entirely from later documentation, as if its mention had been actively discouraged. But across the surviving fragments, one detail remained consistent. It was not decorative, it was directional, a guide, not to wealth or status, but to something located beneath recorded history itself. Most historians would have stopped there and called it myth, a curiosity without foundation. Elena did not stop, and within a week she left for Greece. The monastery she found was not on any meaningful modern registry. It clung to a cliff above the sea, eroded by salt, wind, and time, half consumed by vegetation and structural collapse. Locals avoided it, though none could clearly explain why. Their answers were vague, always circling the same unease, instability, strange echoes, people who entered and returned without speaking about what they saw. Elena entered anyway. Inside, the silence was not natural. It was constructed. Not empty, not peaceful, but deliberate, as if the space itself had been designed to observe rather than house. Her torchlight revealed stone corridors marked by centuries of decay, but beneath the decay was something else, order, intentional structure beneath natural collapse. And then she saw the floor. It was not irregular stonework, it was patterned with precision, and had nothing to do with decoration. Symmetry, repetition, and alignment, a mathematical structure disguised as religious architecture. She realized too late what she had entered. The monastery was not a building, it was a mechanism. The first shift came quietly, almost politely, a change in pressure beneath the stone, as if the structure was acknowledging her presence. Then another, deeper within the walls, like a delayed response waiting for confirmation. She stopped moving. In that stillness, she understood the rule. The system did not react to presence, it reacted to choice. Every step was input, and every movement was a decision being evaluated. Behind her, stone began sealing the passage she had entered through, not quickly nor violently, but inevitably. So she moved forward. Deeper inside, the structure revealed its true nature. Counterweights hidden within the walls adjusted silently. Pressure points triggered distant mechanical responses. Entire corridors reconfigured themselves based on movement alone. It was not a trap, but an evaluation system. It had been running for centuries without interruption. Elena reached the inner chamber just as the monastery began collapsing in controlled sections behind her, sealing itself away piece by piece as though erasing any path back to what lay inside. In the chamber she found a fragment, a broken bronze instrument shaped like a half compass, but its markings did not correspond to geography. Instead, they pointed downward, toward depth rather than distance, toward something buried beneath everything known. Then she heard footsteps, not scattered or uncertain, but organized. A voice followed, calm and absolute, as though it had already encountered her and accounted for her arrival before she reached it. The covenant does not allow discoveries to remain unclaimed. The Covenant of the Iron Cross was a society that existed mostly in fragmented references and suppressed academic speculation, not preservation for understanding, but preservation for ownership. If something survived history, it was because they believed it belonged to someone with authority to control it. And Elena had just taken something they believed was theirs. She did not wait to be questioned. Her escape route collapsed behind her seconds after she took it. Stone sealed itself in layered sections, erasing access as she moved. By the time she reached open air, the monastery was already collapsing inward, not as destruction, but as concealment, as if it had decided that remaining hidden was preferable to being discovered. But the truth had already changed. Elena was no longer alone in this pursuit. Something was following her now. It wasn't always visible, but always present. The next clue led her to Rome. Not the Rome that existed above ground, but the Rome beneath it. Layers upon layers of civilization, each one burying the previous until history became something that was not recorded but hidden. The catacombs beneath the city were deeper than any official map suggested, older, more complex, and built into structures that predated known civilization records in the region. And here, the Serpent scale revealed its true function. It was not a map or a key, but alignment, a system based on astronomical positioning translated into physical architecture. Elena understood then that this was never about treasure, it was about calibration. The chamber responded the moment she entered. The floor shifted beneath her feet and tiles rotated, reoriented, and rebalanced in slow mechanical motion. Every step changed the structure, every movement altered the pace. The room was not fixed, it was reactive intelligence embedded into architecture. Above her, faint echoes confirmed what she already knew, that she was no longer alone. The covenant had arrived. Elena studied the shifting geometry carefully. The patterns were celestial, Star positions translated into structural logic, forming a system that required interpretation rather than force. She moved carefully at first, testing the system, then increasing certainty as the chamber began responding correctly to her alignment. Behind her, the Covenant entered, but they did not understand the system. Their movements were forceful, impatient, misaligned. The structure rejected their approach. Elena reached the center of the chamber just as the final alignment clicked into place. And there it was, the serpent scale, cold, heavy, and real. She held it for a moment without moving, because understanding arrived before action, not wealth or power or control. And control, once discovered, always attracts those willing to destroy for it. Footsteps closed in again, closer now, so she made her decision. She triggered the collapse mechanism embedded within the chamber, not as destruction, but as closure. A final safeguard ensuring the system would not remain open once completed. Stone began to move. The Covenant shouted somewhere behind her as the chamber began sealing itself shut for the final time. Elena ran. Not backwards through history, but forwards through it. When she finally emerged beneath the night sky of Rome, the catacombs sealed themselves behind her without sound, as though they had never existed in the first place. No treasure, map, or path remained, only silence. Some discoveries are not meant to be kept, and this one had been designed to ensure exactly that. Elena stood for a long moment beneath the open sky, the weight of what she had found already fading into something unreachable again, not lost, contained. She turned away from the ruins without hesitation and walked into the night as if the story had never needed to continue at all. Because it hadn't. It had already ended exactly where it was supposed to, in the darkness.